Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
Where is the wind? What's it doing? Right, what am I seeing? It's coming out the front door, it's coming out the low ground window. It's probably going to be there. And then we're looking at the volumes. So is it moving at great pace? What's the colour like? If I'm coming up to a doorway and there's hot gases issuing at a rate of knots, it should be cooling from outside. I watch them duck under it, get the cells set, get the hose ready, and then they'll start gas cooling. Yeah. Hold on, you've just missed 2-3 metres and you've walked 100%. In. But if you do that in a building, you've allowed all those gases past you, 600-700 degrees moving at 10 metres a second, a short pulse where there's no jet reaction and that's so it's not gone anywhere. No. And before I've turned around, it's back past me. We're moving big distances with pulling hose, searching, moving around. You're just going to start cooking from inside.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together. I wanted to kick us off because we've just done 2 weeks of fire behaviour. We've honestly said so many things through these 2 weeks where I've been like, God, I wish I was recording this. And you said it best, don't hoard this knowledge, when you go away. So I wanted to capture a little bit of a round table to go through some of the aspects that have been through over the last 2 weeks. And maybe like now, so few firefighters are going to fires these days. We've had like a reduction in calls of 40% over the last 10 years. Why is this still so important? But before we do that, I wanted to start with a whistle-stop tour for yourself, mate, of kind of your experience at the UK FRS, who you are.
Yes, certainly. So very fortunate enough to join the fire service back in '99. So I think I'm 24 years in, operated at several different levels operationally. So 11, 12 years spent as a firefighter, really learning my trade.
That's rare these days, 11 or 12 years as a firefighter.
Yeah, but the thing was, I was on a station that had a lot of appliances, a lot of specialisms, and you sort of need to learn your trade before you move on, or that's how I felt. I came from the forces. So for me, it was like, learn it, understand it before you move on.
What did you do in the forces?
So I was part of a reconnaissance group working as mine clearance and information back to the big guns to come in and do the stuff. So yeah, we were the sneaky beaky side, but I
think a lot of people agree with you that you should spend a number of years learning the trade, but I almost feel like firefighters these days don't get given that option because they're in for 2 years and because so many people retire and it's like, you should go for a promotion and people are like, fucking hell, I've been in like 2 years. I've never even worn in a fire yet and you want me to go and be a crew, watch commander, whatever.
And totally get that, and it's sort of really hard for the UK Fire Service because that is the way we've been dealt with it, with the way that people move around so quick. But then there will always be some diamonds out there that you think, I tell you what, you probably wasted, and we can move you on through there because your specialism or your skill set is probably being a leader or a manager. So I've got no qualms with that. I don't think they should be forced.
No. Finding the level of leadership that you're most suited to, because it's exactly that. Some people are genuinely better crew managers than they are firefighters, but just because you're an amazing firefighter doesn't mean you're better. And equally, some watch managers are better than they were a crew manager. You know what I mean? It's a different set of skills. And the same, it's perfect with instructors. You'll know people that are incredible firefighters, but delivering that information is far different. Some people that are better at the job won't make for great instructors because they can't get over themselves, or they can't stand and deliver, or they can't be silly with it, or they can't explain it in 7 different ways. It's a different skill set. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And the other side of it is not everybody's practical as well. No. And because the fire service is such a broad range of areas that we do, some people are better at the statistics and that. So I think we should identify that and put them in positions that are good. Identify great crew manager, watch managers, but then identify people who have got a fighting chance of being great instructors. And that's the bit.
Some people get forced into the instructor roles. When did you start doing instructing, and when did you start making sort of fire behaviour your niche, I suppose?
So my first realms into instructor was to do with the IRU, so the Incident Response Unit, and that was to do with teaching forklift truck. Okay. So disappeared off and learned that part of it, obviously loading and offloading, and that's where you get the bug. But if I'm really honest, the bug for wanting to be an instructor came from the army, by being taught by amazing instructors who had past history, past experience. Yeah, they were rough, they were tough, but they told you how it was. But then when you achieved it, it was the achievement that everybody got it.
That was the whole thing for me. That person that stood in front of me, day one training, and this it sounds idiot stupid, but it's like that's the whole point of the podcast. Because if you could listen to one of your instructors, these people you speak about from the military, that if not just you, but students after you, recruits after you, could listen to them, because you'll tell stories of them. You'll say, what was one of the guys' names? This is his first name. You haven't got his whole name.
Colin.
Colin, yeah. If you could listen to him now talk about, because you'll say, I had this great guy when I first joined, his name was Carl, and he did this, or he did that, or he spoke in a certain way, or he had this drill. But you'll tell it in your own bastardized, diluted, not as good a way, because the failing memory that we all have. But if somebody could actually listen to him and his career, I'm like, that is the gold dust. And if we lose that, then, recruits and stuff, they're never going to hear them stories. That's what always frustrates me most about it.
Oh, 100%. And as you say, we've just finished doing a Fire Behaviour course. Yeah. And you'll have had access to, we're probably looking at about 10 different instructors, and all have the different ways of doing things, all different isms. But we're all teaching the same subject, but just a different way of delivering it.
And everyone's throwing that 5% into the cocktail through the course. We had a guy called Ian, there was Jim, there was Dave, John, Steve, yourself, there was loads of different, Matt. Yeah. Everyone had that little bit from their collective experience. We're all looking at the same thing, but from 360 different angles of our experiences as well.
Yeah, and it is totally different. As you say, different fire services have got different ways of doing things, from the structures, from the demographics, from even just the people.
So when did you first do Fire Behaviour?
So started obviously down the route in 2013. Was when obviously I did my first instructor course in Fire Behaviour, but already had the bug. So I'd been brought into training 3 months prior, and obviously ended up working with a guy called Peter, who was
it's kind of too much of a good strong name. Top bloke, what a guy.
But what a guy. Absolutely amazing. Mad as a box of frogs.
Yep.
But just the way he was and the way he loved the subject was what really encapsulated into wanting to do that. But the mad thing I find, like what you just said there, I would sit in the back of the classroom listening, think, I get that, I understand that. Didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
But he had mannerisms. He would move his hands in a certain way, and he would talk in a certain way, and I was morphing into that.
Yeah. So I'd different pauses in different places. And some people is just monotone, isn't it? And you're like, fuck me, don't just stand and read the fucking thing. That's not what it's about. You're the filter. It comes through, you've got to bring it to life. You've got to inject life into the thing. It's just words.
Yeah. 100%, and he was like that. Yeah. So but then I'd actually stop and think, hold on, I'm turning into Pete. I need to stop that.
Yeah.
But then, as you say, we've gone through and I've met some amazing people. Like Dan was a college lecturer, so I picked a lot up from him. And you've just mentioned it there. People put a PowerPoint off and they just read it. Oh my God, I can read that myself.
Yes, this is the point.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
And Dan said, well, I tell you what, Steve, why don't you just put one word on? Yeah. And I look, right.
Just prompts.
Because that word is what you're covering about, and then tell them what you know about that word.
Either a word, a picture, or a question is always great. Because when I do presentations, I use, and I got this from a TED talk, it's just a question. And I'm trying to answer that question for the students or for the audience or for the team. And that's what it should provoke. You know what I mean? It's just subject matters. Because otherwise, you force yourself into an unknown box where it's a statement and you're trying to just say the statement again and again and again in different ways. It's like, no, answer a question.
Yeah.
So when you first got down to the role that you're doing now and you first started looking at the 2-week fire behaviour that's taught all over the world, it's taught in a whole host of different ways. And something Sarah and I were talking about earlier, and something that was said by one of the instructors on the course, was how much beneficial it is for incident commanders, because we can be guilty of like fire behaviour instructors going back to their service and just the saying BA is the god of everything. And some people can think, yeah, but I'm an incident commander, I need a holistic view of all the different stuff. Yeah. And we don't give incident commanders as much of an insight into things like reading the smoke. So I wanted to try and force you into a corner of like top tips or thoughts, or when people are coming and they're doing their incident command revalidations, they're thinking 2BO hose drill. That's what it is. 2BO hose drill. I need to do my 360. and they're just ticking a tick list.
Yep.
But
100%.
when it comes to like reading smoke or looking at the behavioural aspects of what is being presented in front of them at a job, why do you think it should be something? Because I don't think it is, and I'm sure there'll be services out there that say, oh no, we do it. A lot of them don't necessarily go into the aspects of recognising signs and symptoms of what is being presented to me. They could define a flashover or a backdraft, but in the context of turning up to an incident, why do you think it's vital for incident commanders to have a little bit of this input?
Yeah, totally. And just to go back to signs and symptoms, backdraft, definitely you'll get that externally. Flashover, I'd argue, it's not really of relevance.
But people will say, oh, it's flashed over. Wow, how can you see that from here?
I can't tell that from here.
But they'll say it's a term they'll just punt out.
Yeah.
It's like buzzword bingo.
Yeah, and it's sort of irrelevant. I'll give you a backdraft all day long, obviously for the way it works. So obviously sub-blackened windows, which is great.
Yeah.
But most fires happen at night time, so it's really hard to see.
And we're just recalling a list, though, is the thing. And people say, I'll use the tick. Tick's not going to see through the glass. It's just going to tell you the external temperature of the thing. And people go, Yeah.
So it's something that's creeping in. So because we've identified that, I was fortunate enough to be operational, crew commander, watch commander, and station manager. So I've been and turned up, whether it's the first person in at the job and going on to assist. And that's the part that people don't understand, is that it really does need to be stand back and look. Don't do this ticky list. Yes, get your tick off. Have a look and see what's going on, what are the indicators. But it's probably only going to focus on a certain part of a building. As you say, it does not see through the brick wall, it does not see through the glass window. It just gives you a rough idea of where the hottest part of that building is. Doesn't even mean that's the seat of it. It just means that's where we are. The 360 bit is very annoying, especially from where I spent most of my trade was in tourist streets. They tend to be 70 hours as long.
Going for 360, I see an half hour.
So that's a big 360. And people laugh and joke and say, yeah, well, you should just knock on the next door neighbour and get through. But at 2 a.m, they tend not to be too chirpy with you.
And you can get too far down the rabbit hole of, oh, we'll have a check the connecting. But I tell you, I'm just going to pop up their step. Well, now the IC's gone down a rabbit hole of the blinkers and they're not where they need to be. And they got lost.
100%. And they're not actually doing anything.
No.
And that fire is just getting worse.
Because
we've turned up there and we're not actually doing any action.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's even standing back, even if I didn't have a thermal image camera, I could probably gauge where and what's happening with what I can see.
Why?
Because we can look at stuff by looking at the front of a building, if you've got your 2 up, 2 down, and we've got smoke issuing out of everywhere, then we're going to hazard a guess it's probably on the ground floor, or it started on the ground floor, because that's where, obviously, the smoke's coming out of, unless we're talking wind-driven fire, which is a different monster, but hopefully I've sussed that when I've got off an appliance and I can gauge it's windy and where it's going. Purely for the fact that...
Again, that's an assumption with the greatest of respect, because I always say common sense isn't commonplace. And it wasn't until someone said to me, and I'll not do the whole statement, but they said, wind on your back, good to attack. Wind on your front, don't be a silly sausage, basically. But it was like, and I thought, but how many people really think about that? Because I think it depends what type of incident it is. If you said a hazmat, people are like, wind direction, this, that, lay of the land, incline down.
We talked about this before, though, didn't we? The hazmat, hazmat is such a big area and there's so much we go into, but we're happy to go into a fire. And there's hazardous areas.
Which is a hazmat.
A box of unknown substances.
We'll go in all day.
We're going all day.
And you're thinking, there's nothing not right here. So.
But people go up in the middle of the night and their mindset's in a different place. Wind direction might not come into their head.
But that's what we're trying to do, that it's the quick wins. So, where is the wind? What's it doing? What am I seeing? It's coming out the front door. It's coming out the low ground window. It's probably going to be there, because if it's an upstairs one and it started there, it won't actually come down the way because it'll have suffocated itself. So you're looking at it's probably burned through from somewhere. This is where we're aiming at. And then we're looking at the volumes. So is it moving at great pace? What's the colour like? We know what in a general
What
house.
might that tell somebody?
So it'll tell the ferocity or the intensity of the fire inside. So if it's coming out, obviously we know fire gases can move up to 10 metres a second. Not that I'm going to measure it, but I can tell at a great pace that that's coming out just by looking at it. If I want a better one, I'll go side on to the exhaust, and you think, that's shifting it at great pace.
Is it lazy? Is there an obvious bi-directional flow path? Is there a strong drawing at the bottom, or is it
am I getting that big wedge at that door? I know that's hungry. It's kicking out black unburned products, which, you've got laminate floors, you've got black TVs, like the plastics of your TVs. So, it's going to be a horrible stuff that's coming out. But the speed and the volume, and whether it's actually really not giving you much of an inlet because there's that much built up, there's that much pressure in there. They're just struggling to get out. And
one of the things some of the students on this course not necessarily struggle with, but I think it was a new terminology, some of them, was whether it's fuel controlled or ventilation controlled. And we started to get at times down a rabbit hole and had to come back and clarify, which is great, and that's the whole learning cycle for everybody, isn't it? About, well, if it's issuing and it's showing and it's drawing and it's appearing to draw under pressure, then it's ventilation controlled. But for some people it was, well, it's going to issue smoke no matter what. So as soon as it's issuing smoke, does that mean it's ventilation controlled? Not inherently. I wonder, I know it's pushing you into a corner again, but is it like, how would you best try and articulate that for people? And is it necessarily important for them to try and realise that prior to committing crews?
I think when we're talking frontline, I'd probably not be too bothered about that because we still need to get in and do something.
Yeah.
So
You've got to take some action.
Yeah, stand there twiddling my thumbs thinking, is that fuel controlled, is it ventilation controlled? Well, everything's coming out the way, so we're still talking fuel because there's still enough air in that building to deal with it. So it could be like big open plan, it could be multiple rooms. But we've still got to get in at some point. Yeah. So it depends where you work. I know many services are trying different routes. Do they try and close the door behind them?
Ventilation scares people. That's why we're only looking at certain phases in the UK. And I know, obviously, the both of you have done your TAC vents course and stuff like that. People are scared of it. We see it crop up in a lot of debriefs. People worry about spontaneous ventilations. Eventually, it's going to self-ventilate anyway if you don't do anything. And if you are seeing smoke issuing from any sort of outlet, then it has vented in some capacity. So that takes the scary part away from certain people. And we all know some of the reasons why we do door procedures. But ventilation is something that really still scares people. And then we look at the American methods of the rapid direct attack, and some people going straight into forced ventilation and just chasing it through. We're not quite there in the UK.
I think there's some progressive services out there. You know, obviously, I started the fire service back in '99, and that's all I ever knew was what was the old Phase 3 attack. So that was me, turn up, and not that I was the incident commander, but you knew what the gaffer was thinking. So they're quickly looking, right, I've got my inlet, which tends to be your front door. On my 360, I've noticed there is a vent. I tell you what, I'm going to take a punt at that, and I'm going to get ventilation in there. Just to see whether it gives us that clean track of air.
But unless you've got confident, competent, and I'm not saying that anybody isn't, firefighters, because you've got a lot of new recruits out there, and we're so heavily focused sometimes on this pulsing and this, sweep and stamp and that slow progression, that if you're not progressing quickly, then you're not going to get to the seat of the fire as quickly as you need to. The ventilation needs to walk hand in hand with a strong brief of, I need you to make quick progress. For all intents and purposes, unless you see gaping holes in the floor, make progress through that building, because you need to get eyes on this fire, because I'm forcing some air in behind you.
But that's where we need to do it in training then, and we need to train realistically. And yes, everything's got its merit. If we aren't doing ventilation and it's thick, black, red hot, can't see my hand in front of me, then I'm going to go slow, steady. You're going to be hugging the wall. It's just the way the world is. You'd be crazy not to. But if you suddenly get your sense back, if you've got a bit of vision, then use it for what it is. I'm not saying willy-nilly wander through the middle of a floor any way, shape or form. You'll still stay to a side, a reference point, a left or a right, other side, because it's the strongest part of the room.
I think Dave was saying the other day where it's okay if you don't remember because I can't remember, where the origin of directional searching came from. Because it's almost an expectation with a lot of briefs from incident commanders now. They go, well, you need to give me a directional search. But actually, across the UK and across the world, some do compartmental searches, some do directional searches, some follow flow paths, but it depends on, again, their equipment, their competency in identifying these things. But certain services, and I can certainly say services I've worked in, have always been, well, is it a left or right and direct or indirect? And I'm like, well, depends what the fire is, depends what I want you to do. If I send you on, and then people are like, oh, but I can't go off that brief, and common sense starts to limit them from going, well, I can see the fire is in that room opposite me in the hallway, but damn, I'm on a left-hand search. Never mind. Next crew will have to do it, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I think I've had them same chats with Dave as well, and it's from an incident that happened in London, in one of the big market halls that they've got many down there, and it probably didn't go how they wanted it to, and obviously there's multiple all over the world, but I think things just didn't happen. They didn't have a specific brief, so everybody just deployed into a big open area, and that's where it filtered through.
It's the extremes, isn't it? If you're going into a big wide expanse, yes, give a tighter brief because there's a big room for error. If you're going into a 2 up, 2 down, You could still get lost, 100%, but there's a lot more references.
Yeah.
The stairs, windows, doors, your hose reel.
Yeah.
There's a lot more landmarks that you can take from something like that.
We used to teach that back when I was in service, was you would have that, so you had your hose reel, you should never leave that. But you never know. When your back's against the wall and panic sets in, you could put that down because you're trying to find something else. You could have done a rescue, and you know yourself, when you're trying to pick up something, couple of movements, and you've left something, and think, God, it's hot now, I just need to get out.
Yeah.
And it can
Or
go
it's
that.
snagged, and you're like, let's leave it here, I think I know where I am.
Yeah. Or there's multiple, and they've crossed over, it looks like Clapham Junction, you think, oh, which one's which? Because we've had the talks where should the hose reels have the arrows on the
guideline aspects,
So I've looked at all the different trials, and there are points, but after it's been dragged along the floor, it'll disappear and it'll rub off. But then there's the other one that is listen for the noise. So listen for the noise of the appliance should take you back to your reference point. It was always a one. I think, no, that's quite hard. So you've got all sorts going on in that building.
You arrive at a broken window and you can hear it's just there. Okay, right, we're going to clamber through this window now.
We got into a one as well. We would drop a handheld lamp at the door. Was always your reference point as well, and the crews would even take it with them. So if they move through, and they've just dropped it at the door. So when they've gone in, they've done their stuff, take it, close the door, lamp back, move. So it was always they could look. That's it.
I've never heard that one.
Oh no, I've not either.
Awesome.
It was just something that we brought in. That it was just always that's me get out of jail card. There's my lifeline. That's the way. That's me door out. Yeah. Which I know when you think, well, big building would work. Domestic doesn't really need it. But you'll still see it. The crews would put it. It would be there at the door, ready for the BA crew going in. They would leave one there all the time. There's that shining light. That's the way out. So whenever they could track back to it.
I wanted to ask about, because there's an aspect where people could also argue to all of these, like, oh, should we have directions on the hose reel? Should we have a lamp near the thing? There's an argument for why can't firefighters just be better? And you're like, well, that's a bit fucking strong. And not everybody's got access to all the same resources. So when we're talking about flow paths and we're talking about reading smoke and reading the fire, there's a lot of training units, certainly across the UK, are gas-powered rigs.
Yep.
Arguments to and against. Obviously, there's a big carbonaceous factor and the fact they're a lot safer if you're near around a residential estate or something like that. But some people have said, and I agree with them to an extent, they're not the same. You don't get the same feedback. The smoke doesn't behave the same. There's no point in doing it. No point is a bit strong, I think. So if you could give us the devil's advocate for maybe both sides of the coin, because a lot of people are investing in training centres this time. There's a lot of investment going into fire and rescue services, a lot of training centres, a lot of fire stations being invested in. What's the for and against argument for gas versus carbonaceous burns, you reckon?
There's a multitude here. So you just as soon as you mention carbonaceous, we're going through the whole world of contaminants.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a big one that the services will be worried about.
But they should have it on their stations anyway, because even if we're not doing it in training, they're still going to be going to live incidents.
Yeah.
So I would argue
that process should be in place.
It should be there anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But that'll be the reason why that they'll look.
You are reducing it, sure, if you're having gas.
I've worked with both. So we had a training rig was gas, which, as you say, is it gives you the visual indicators of flames in the gas layer type of thing. But the smoke does not react the same because it's synthetic smoke or it's used by straw bale, which doesn't really work that way because straw bale, full of moisture, tends to hang low, doesn't react like you would expect a fire gas to. It just makes vision really hard. But for me, you still get the feedback of the heat, which I think you definitely need as a firefighter when you're using gas. You still need to feel that feedback. You can still use the techniques, but yes, they don't.
That's
react.
what I'm saying. So then when you're as an instructor, you're going, I like what I see, turn the fire off.
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's what I end up doing. But they don't, because they've done a couple of good ones, a couple of bad ones, and you're waiting for like 3 good of whatever good is. And in most services, it's like pulse, paint, and you go, yep, fire's off, and you're like, yeah, but that's not. It's not really what I want to see, but it is. You did do it right.
But it's still better than nothing.
I know, but they're not. Yeah, they're not going to get the outcome they want.
100% they won't. But unfortunately, the world's changed a lot. Emissions, built up housing estates. We need a fire station, need to be in the local community because that's where it is best actioned. Yeah. So to do that training, we use gas. We've used the plasma screens with obviously your smoke generators, where you'd obviously have your visual for the fire. Put water on there, creates more. Well, it makes the smoke machine create more smoke, which is a bit back.
And now there's all the VR word, isn't there? We're having flame systems. We're having them on the podcast very soon. They've done some stuff. I know over at the Fire Service College, they've got some expertise there, and they've got people with some of the systems. Some people, again, say it's at least similar. It's better than nothing. But then there's the old hat sometimes saying, oh, you'll never get, yeah, but some people can't afford that. It's very resource heavy. So there is an argument both ways. But with the aspect of heat exhaustion, because we did one of the debriefs on this course about Stephen Hunt, and the fact that it played a factor in how disorientated people got within there, and as ourselves have found ourselves disorientated in some very small units over these last 2 weeks because we haven't been exerted to that sort of heat exhaustion. A lot of the instructors at the facility that we're at are in there regularly, and they've got a conditioning to it. So I do also think that for brand new recruits, that heat and exhaustion exercise of walking around, picking up barrels, whatever it might be, and running themselves right down the cylinder, it's still very useful as well. So if at least they haven't got something like a gas-powered rig, they're not going to get that aspect to it. And that's self-awareness. I mean, have you ever found yourself to the point where you're hanging out your arse on your knees and recognising when enough is enough? Because even if you recognise enough is enough now, you might still be 10 minutes away from actually getting out, and that thing's going to chase you all the way.
Yeah. So operationally, no, but that is through the training that I received when I first joined, and we did exactly what you've just said there. It was where you set to exhaustion. So give you confidence in how good that set can be, how much air you demanding from it. It'll still just keep giving whatever you want. And we used coming in through loopholes, which is obviously not the normal way of entry into the building, but it's just what it was doing was getting you thinking. It was hard work. You were coming through a restricted access to get in, and then we were working our way down 4 levels, understanding navigating stairs, working in chimney effect, to actually locate a fire whilst manually moving 45mm hose, which is all graft. But what the instructors did there was at every level, right, how are you feeling now? What are you at? Tell me what you're feeling. Right. And they would pull it at certain points, right, that is your limit now. So if you're feeling that you're trying to bend over and obviously trying to breathe when you're hunched over, your diaphragm's crumpled over, you're not getting the air in that you need.
We just ask pertinent things like, what day of the week is it? Where are we? You know, what course are you on? What's your name? Who am I? Sometimes they forget the who am I. We can't fail them for that. I can't pull them because I always say to people, look, I don't care if you forget who I am. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting the benefit of what the thing is. But I said to a few people when we came out, you know, what's cylinder pressure? What day is it? Simple things that they should be able to answer. And you see that cognitive strain as they try to recall, or like you say, that they're shaking the wrong parts of their set when they're and it's just those little slips you start to see that says we're starting to head there now.
And we've done trials with obviously different BA companies, like set manufacturers, and they're doing temperature monitoring in the sets, and they want to do cognitive skills. And say, well, that's all well and good, but it needs to be simple questions, because they were thinking mathematical. And people might not actually have known that anyway. Never mind.
You can ask me Monday morning, you know, after a fresh sleep, I ain't going to get that one.
And I said it needs to be basic tasks, or pick the red barrel up and move it to there, or move that to that. And it's the understanding of that side of it. But then again, so for me, no, I understand my limits because I've seen that, and that's what you really have got to remember. So it's building up your mental history, mental notes of when you don't feel so great, that's your point to turn around. But obviously being honest as well, and firefighters are really poor at that because it's the bravado.
It's part of your identity.
I'm all right.
I'm a tough firefighter.
I'm not. And that's too late.
Shit, out, and you're like, okay, we'll get out now, but we're still going to move. You can't just stand up and run. Because then it's like, where's your number one? He's somewhere in there somewhere, I don't know. Right, okay, not ideal. And then again, the Stephen Hunt situation, not that his partner did or didn't abandon him, they both individually kind of got lost, but that's the worst thing. And you see it with the Fleur Lombard report and stuff like that. People come out and it's horrible. If someone even says to you, where's your BA partner? Your heart just drops. You're like, shit.
Even in training.
100%. You're like, did I just do that? They were behind me. They were literally behind me. But the perception of where you thought they were, you were moving a bit quicker. They lost contact with you. They turned the wrong way. And then Balmoral Bar was the same.
And because we've had it in real life, we've got to do that. And that's as an instructor, you should always be the last one out. But you see it so many times, the instructor will walk out the door. Where's your team at? Then one appears, brilliant. Oh no, the other one's not there. And it's a training rig. We know it inside out, but still dangerous stuff in there.
100%.
And I've been in there where I've had qualified firefighters that disorientated, screaming it was too hot. There was no fire on that floor. None. It was 34 degrees. panicked and started taking the mask off, but it was smoke filled from a straw bin.
Wow.
That's still dangerous.
100%.
And it's like a couple of breaths of that, you're on the deck. We still have them, so, and that's without the heat
It can
exhaustion.
escalate real fast.
Claustrophobia is kicked in as well.
Yeah, I think on our course, the students, everything, quite early on learn, actually, I need to be aware of this. Like you said, I'm not feeling great, right, let's get out then. Rather than, I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, it'll be all right, like you said. But I think we did early on think, yeah, it can quickly go from this feels a bit uncomfortable to actually I'm starting to burn. Yeah. And you have to kind of be like, you don't feel all right, it's okay to be like, let's get out.
But you make a good point, though, and a few of us quickly learned about layering up underneath, and I know a lot of this will be obvious to a lot of firefighters out there, but I was speaking with a PPE provider the other day, and they were trying to build an argument for, and again, they come from a commercial world, so they are trying to sell stuff to fire and rescue services, but they're trying to push long sleeves as an essential part of the, what's the thing when they go out for tender? They're like, the tender should include that all firefighters have to, and the services are pushing back, going, no, because you want to charge us more for that, and you want to make it out of this material, and blah, 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 and everything's got a budget to it, but the irony is when you come on a fire behaviour course at any facility pretty much up and down the UK, and you know, at certain places in the UK, you guys have international customers and stuff like that, and you say, has everybody got long sleeves? You might want to consider putting a second flash hood on. Yeah. How can we say that in a training course, knowingly, when we've got firefighters out there? I mean, my service, we don't issue long sleeves. You sometimes get a fleece if you've been in long enough. They haven't got the tools for the job. And then we're going to put them in the thing that we're just doing. So, you know, the facility that you work at, you make sure people always have those long sleeves, or if not, they provide them for them. What's your thoughts on the fact that a lot of CSOs aren't doing that?
For me personally, I think we should train to what we know firefighters are wearing. Okay. And it tends to either be T-shirt or polo shirt. Yeah. And the fire kit is good enough. Okay. To be able to obviously give them that protection from the radiant heat. Yeah. Because it is great stuff. Yeah. But then the other side, you talk about obviously double flash hoods, long sleeves. Yes, all that's doing is mean you stay in there longer. Okay. Which, is that really a good thing? I'd argue not. No. No, because obviously then you're becoming more fatigued. And if you think about when we do our fire behaviour training, we tend to work in 40-foot shipping containers moving 20 metres max. Mm-hmm. Where if you're actually doing a proper search and rescue, in them same conditions, them same temperatures, we're moving big distances with pulling hose, searching, moving around. You're just going to start cooking from inside. And it's I
always used to think of it with a similar analogy when I used to do strongman and powerlifting, and we'd all start wrapping our knees up and wearing compression suits and belts, this and everything like that. And people would say, oh, that's cheating. And I was like, no, it's not cheating. But then I started to think to myself, well, it's not cheating, but it's helping your body do something it shouldn't be doing. Yeah, so I've snapped patella tendons, I've prolapsed disc in my back, and I might just be able to, I'm a crap lifter. But as well, it was like, my body's not supposed to be doing this. Yeah. I'm artificially applying things to it to help it do something it's not designed to do. It's just designed to lift itself plus a third of its weight. And I'm trying to squat 350 kilos. No wonder it's straining under pressure and you're still doing damage. So I suppose the argument there is, if we gave people more tools, whatever, more layers to our kit, extra under the physiology, and we looked at the physiology with the Stephen Hunt thing the other day, past certain degrees, that disorientation is always going to happen. Yeah. You can't stop your body perspiring. You can't stop that temperature rising. And if you just put it inside a thing that makes it okay to be there, are we setting ourselves up for failure, I suppose? Yeah. But then the same argument probably was when we first introduced flashers, and people are saying, no, I like to have my ears exposed because that tells me when I've been in too long. And you're like, fair point. So maybe that was the birth of this first pit where we were like, put that on, you can stay in longer. And their argument was probably, I don't want to stay in longer. It's too hot, I shouldn't be in here. Yeah. But we want to save the casualty, or maybe.
And we do, but I think with the flash hood, I think that was probably one of the inventions that was great. And it does obviously protect
No one's regretting that one. We wanted to get rid of the slicks, didn't we? I wanted to ask you, and certainly for yourself as well, sir, like, what are the misconceptions or the common errors? Because most people that come on fire behaviour courses are usually, I think it's a minimum they have to be BAI first thing, but maybe some aren't, I don't know. Yeah,
well,
it's desired.
It's desired is where
it would help.
Yeah, it is a desired criteria, but because of where the courses are structured and the way it is, then sometimes it doesn't work that way. But they do need to be qualified BA wearers. Which
so they've got a base level, they've got a foundation of knowledge. Yeah. That being said, what are some of the common cracks in those foundations? Some of the common misconceptions? Because a lot of people, we spoke about pulsing as being a common firefighter meta hat. It's a tool in the toolbox. It works in certain environments. but people's definition of things, people's expectations, they only know what they've been told. Yeah. So what would you say are some of the common myths that are quickly either dispelled or highlighted or shone a bit of light on when you first get, because you run so many courses on this sort of stuff?
Yeah, and well, I can hold my hands up because I used to teach this as well
Yeah.
until I've looked into it and progressed on and met the different people as you learn new skills, is the least amount of water to deal with it, which is a big one because I think it's referred to as tippy-tappy or sharp pulse, and it's the understanding of what it's doing. We've got 600-700 degrees moving at 10 metres a second. Yeah. A sharp pulse where there's no jet reaction in that, so it's not gone anywhere. No. And before I've turned around, it's back past me. Yeah. So we see a lot of that. The safety pulse, so the umbrella or whatever people call it. Yeah. At no point am I saying these should never be used. They've all got their place. But if I'm coming up to a doorway and there's hot gases issuing at a rate of knots, it should be cooling from outside. The big issue that I see on all of these courses is firefighters. I watch them duck under it, get themselves set, get the hose ready, and then they'll start. That's cooling. So hold on, you've just missed 2-3 metres and you've walked 100%. In. You're all right in a training environment because it's going to atmosphere. But if you do that in a building and you've walked through the porch into the lounge and then you're moving into the fire compartment, you've allowed all those gases past you. That's
because it's not a visible thing as well. Obviously, using a thermal imaging camera, it's visible, but it's if you saw it, if it was a different colour or something like, or if it was water, because we spoke about thermodynamics and hydrodynamics and how they're very similar. If you saw it coming through and the fact that you're just putting a small block in front of it there, and everything that's quickly gushing past that small block that you've put in for 2 seconds, if you then use the analogy of putting a big block or a big push or a big hand grasp of this thing and constantly pushed it away from you, you'd still see bits leaking through. But, and I'm sure someone far smarter than me has done a video of it somewhere that maybe hopefully articulates that, but it's hard for people to get their mind around. They're like, it's almost like we do a little thing and then we sit and high five for a second. We obviously don't, but it's almost like we are. We're like, hey, see that, see that
misconception
pulse? See how much better it feels? And you start kind of saying it to yourself. You're like, oh, it feels better, doesn't it? And you're like, yeah, but secretly like, no, it's fucking really hot.
I think it's that misconception that when we're outside, it doesn't start till we get in.
Yeah.
So get in there. Right, you ready? Yeah, let's go. And you're thinking, so when I think that changed massively throughout the 2 weeks, which was brilliant. It's kind of like, hang on, it starts here. Like, what is going on before we get in? Let's make them conditions better as we're going in. Because like you say, you see it when we've been looking and watching others. It is a duck. It's a very visible duck under. I'm sat in the position, are you? Let's go now. And you're thinking, as instructors, followers, but there's all this, and you've just ducked under it. But it is, let's get ourselves set and let's go.
And there is a kind of a spectrum, because a lot of people do take the piss out of the American model and they use terms like empty the bay or whatever on it, and you see them dragging in 45 and just bollocking straight to the river. And there's a spectrum, but also with respect to them, dimensions of buildings are different. There's many other factors we don't consider when we just look at an Instagram video and take the mickey out of it. But we have progressively over the 2 weeks applied more and more and more water. This whole fan/rainbow/wave has become a really, really popular and effective method. And again, we don't want people to walk away and just use that because there are other tools in the toolbox. But certainly in compartments similar to some of the boxes that we've been working in, it's been tremendously effective.
And it is, but it's like you say, you've got to still make sure that you get all those gases.
Yes, yeah.
And not just deal with it. And it's, like as Pete just said there, it's getting that water up above you to start to grab it, which is making your area safe.
And don't let go of it.
And then we're pushing it back to where. And if we could get it back to the engine fire, absolutely fantastic. But if not, then it's the next point that we're going to aim to get to. So the turn of a room, the doorway.
Has anybody ever considered having an slightly inclined fall? You know when you squeegee? Basically, you squeegee a bit. If you just do it on the left, what's going to happen?
Oh, yeah, it all comes back on the right. Yeah, no, it was doing that.
If you just squeegee the right. But if you go bang, 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 and push it and push it and push it, if someone built a rig like that or did a video of it,
and
that's a great analogy, right? That works.
The squeegee analogy is brilliant. I like that. And also, if you did it and then just sat there, like again we've seen throughout these 2 weeks,
it's fucking on your feet.
But that happens as well, and that's a massive thing that I think everyone's taken from this course is do it, but then move. It has to be.
You've got to step forward into the stuff you've just pushed.
You made it safe. Move. And I love that squeegee analogy now because it is the same. If you did it and then was like, we've done that thing,
and then you got wet feet.
Right, it's too late there now. Great.
Soaking wet.
Well, that was
ankle
rubbish.
deep because you're not paying attention.
And it is. if you're making it safe, get in there.
Yeah.
Do it, get in, do it, get on. And then that's how that progression was working. But the constant flow is brilliant. And I think it is massively, all of us have taken away using more water, because so many have said to yourselves and the others, instructors, yeah, I put a lot more water on, that came out and said, what did you think of the conditions? Actually, it felt a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's what we want, ultimately, to make them conditions better for us.
Because of what we're talking about there, and you think the old schools were back in the late 90s when we started doing fire behaviour, it was cool the gases above us, do your long pulses, trying to put the headlights out with the terminology that was used.
Yeah.
Well, that was all right. We were a 40-foot shipping container, but we were actually hitting the fuel.
Yeah.
So that's why that was happening.
Yes,
so we fired a long pulse in that went right the way down, left or right, whichever you went first. Did obviously contract the gases, took it down there, went dark, and yes, you fired them up, so you'd quickly move across to the left-hand side, long pulse into there, and you'd end up fighting it backwards and forwards. But we're fuel cooling. What we're talking about a lot on fire behaviour now is actually gas cooling, and that's the bit that people need to understand. If I can see the fuel, I'm hitting the fuel.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking the energy
That's
out
an
of the
accidental
fire.
behaviour we fall into, isn't it? Because it's like pulse, and then we're like, are you going to hit the fire's there, right? The thing you're trying to get to is in front of you.
Yeah.
That's
So
almost
get that.
progressing through the building, through the compartments to get, when you see it, put it out.
Yeah.
But we're so discouraged sometimes from putting it out because we've got another group coming in.
Yeah.
And that's the worry, isn't it? That creep of a bad behaviour of, no, put it out.
Yeah.
You can see the fire, put it out.
Yeah. Or you'll hear the other one is, I'm using the light of the fire to search the room.
Yeah.
Well, that's seconds. That's not leave it burning.
That's a
so
glance.
it's nice and
That's a
ambient
number
in
2
front.
glance.
Yeah.
As someone's number 1 can see the thing,
happy.
bang.
Right, get rid of that. That's my
Yeah,
hazard. Get that out of the game. But to get that into people's context, what we're doing is we're designing new boxes so we're not going to be burning in straight runs.
Yeah.
We're creating a burn
We're doing
room
some of
off.
that with L-shapes
Yeah.
and stuff today, don't we? And U-shaped containers.
Oh, yeah,
So we've
and-
got
to
that.
discourage people from, because it's just that picture in their mind. If I can see the thing and I'm not putting it out, why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even subconsciously, if you don't realise we're doing that, we are doing that. I can see a fire and I'm being actively discouraged not to put it out.
Which is total alien and
It's totally alien.
creates training scars. And all,
Yeah, training scars. Great point. I wanted to ask about Swedish method, if we could, for a second, because people often reference that. It's almost like a buzzword. We go, oh, yeah, we've adopted Swedish. But if you do speak to the Chandra Fells, the Stefan Svenssons, all these people that I've spoken with, they're like, yeah,
That's
we
not
don't do
what
that.
we
So could you try and unpick that in any way, shape or form as to what it is people think we're saying, and myself included, because I'm still learning all of this, versus what's perhaps being practiced? Because they're some of the ones that really have stayed at the forefront of fire behaviour, really.
Yeah, and probably more so for the types of buildings that they have. Obviously tend to be massively wood structures, so when they go, they go. The bits that I know with the Swedish guys, obviously Lars and the different ones that we've worked with here, is that theirs is rapid and quick. Where you've alluded to, we'll do something, high five each other, and then do something, and then have a look at what we've done. Yeah, I like that. Where theirs is not. If you watch any of their training videos, it's on, and but the water's just on. And yeah, they might be doing the long pulse, but it's continuous, so it's nigh on, straight continuous flow.
It's the squeegee method.
Yeah.
That's not going to catch. I know it's not going to catch on.
It might catch on, it might. I'll start pushing
Oh,
it.
they're on the back. I've even watched them sliding on the cylinder.
Really?
With doing, obviously, their gas coolant to get to where they need to be. And you think, well,
Why not?
so, yeah, and the reason, obviously, where I think we've ended up, so when did fire behaviour probably started back end of the 90s in the UK.
Well, it came after 3D firefighting and a few other books, didn't it? It came kind of off the back of those, I think.
And then a DG fire officer letter came out, and that's where we need to start pushing it. And it was obviously backed up with the 3 phases of TAC, PPV. And it's the way it is, it all depends on the instructors that really first adopted it and their interpretation of how they did it. And then the other one, can we do what another country does? Like you mentioned, America, they'll do smooth bore, straight stream, and they will wash it down the road. A lot of UK cities couldn't support that amount of water flow.
No.
Because we just haven't got that. We've got old Victorian mains that are lucky if you get 3 bar. We're not going to be able to have multiple jets capable of doing that. So
People just look at the end product, but they forget that relies on a series of other economical, environmental, and organisational factors: equipment, people, training, resources. We can't just look at the end thing in isolation. And we say that the same with ventilation. You know, we laugh, or we don't laugh at all, but like people turn their noses up at firefighters on roofs, cutting holes in roofs, and go, "Oh, stupid and dangerous to fall through. Not surprised." And you're like, "Yeah, but when you come to a fire behaviour thing, and we're doing demonstrations, what's one of the most effective things? I'll tell you what, open the vertical vent, and that'll buy us more time. So we know
naturally,
vertical tactical ventilation is a very, very smart approach.
Yeah.
So, but we just look at the end product and go, oh, chainsaw on a roof, but he's going to chop through and fall through. And you're like, well, let's not look at it in isolation.
But that's all the way back to when we first started this whole conversation is the firefighters are only good as the training that they ever received.
Yeah.
So if we only give them a couple of bits of information and not the whole picture, they're only ever going to know that bit. So if all they're being taught is get on the roof and cut a hole, that's all they're going to do.
Yeah.
I bet when they were told a lot of other factors.
Yes.
Is it spongy? Is it obviously supported? What else is there? Are you actually above the fire before you're cutting that?
You and John made some great points through the course where it was about being able to answer the third or fourth why, which I really loved. And I wonder if you could, I'm forcing you into articulating that, but like, why is it not enough? We can't be the adult in the room just going, because I said so. Yeah. Why does the third and fourth why matter?
To say anything, you've got to have context behind it. And the other side of it is people learn totally different. Yeah. Some people love the list, not a problem in having a list if that's how you check it off in your mind. Some people love to see a diagram, absolutely fantastic. But then surprisingly, we all need to be able to do it practically. Yes. Doesn't matter who you are. So even as an instructor, you should be able to do it practically.
Yeah, how you process it is one thing, but how you deliver the end product is, it's got to be ultimately the same,
But there's no point me just turning around and saying, right, Sarah, do me a favour, chuck some water up there. Why?
Yeah.
Because I said so. I'm the bloody instructor.
Yeah. But we've had it.
Some people do it.
Yeah. Long pulls, 2 seconds. Well, why? Well, what's that going to do?
And then they pull them out and go, did you see the difference?
Yeah.
No? Well, yeah.
But that's what I love. I can speak to you, and when we stood outside, and I always go, so what are you thinking? Yeah. Talk to me, because I want to know what you think and... Oh, why is that happening?
I can see your cogs turning.
Why is that happening?
Tell me.
I want to learn off you, and I want those whys, and the fact that you can do that, and you've got that context and depth, is brilliant. Because then, like you say, I think, I want to know all that, and it does. And it does give that better understanding.
Yeah. But some people fear the why, because they're the instructors where when the tire goes out, they realise they stood there naked, and they don't know the why.
Yeah.
So they discourage the why. But it's okay not to know. It's about taking a student from where they are to where they're not, from something they know, whatever context they have of BA, whatever their idea of fire is. Their fire might be candle. That's my comprehension of fire. That's all I know prior to this course. So you need to be able to go back to candle and take them from candle to this, from this to this, from that to laminar to this to this to this. But that's the third or fourth why.
And it is, and it just shows. Obviously, I've been with you guys for 2 weeks. Qualified firefighters over multiple years and here on instructor course. I moved away yesterday morning and went with brand new recruits.
Yeah.
And their first part in a chem lab was with me yesterday. Some had little bits, they'd done a little bit of fire triangle and all that side, but you could just see them heads thinking, well, that
what are those first analogies? What are some of your favourite ways? If my daughter was here, she's 11 years old, and you probably could take her within half an hour period to some very complex comprehensions if you painted the right path and connected with where she is at. So what are some of the more simplistic ones that if you were talking to your neighbour, you could take them to? So
the one thing that I always find is quite amusing that people think the actual fuel is, and when I talk about fuel, I mean
the chair's on fire.
The computer's on fire, the table, the wood's on fire. And you think, well, it's not really, is it? And you can see them looking at you, think, well, it is, because you put a lighter to it and it's now that's on fire. Yeah. So, well, no, now we need to strip it back to what we're talking about. So we'll go very, very basic. Where are we with this triangle? Right, you've got your match. Yep, there's me heat. Happy. Got me fuel, that's me table. Brilliant. Full of air because we're all still stood up in the room and we haven't collapsed. So we know we've got that. But then it's that chain reaction that's happened, the decomposition of stuff. And they're looking at you totally blank.
It's the first step into the fog. They're like,
I've lost where you're at now.
Come back.
Just think, and it's a bit where you're saying, look, and we've got like your molecule pin board that we have, and we just show them that's what you've got. Yeah. By heating that up, it's going to start expanding and moving and contracting and doing its stuff. And by that, it's just like putting your hands together, rubbing. It's friction creates heat. And then you say, I get that. That's what's happening in any substance. There's movement happening, which is creating its own heat.
If you just do it twice, heats a little, and then the friction stops, and it reduces back down. It comes away from its capacity. But if you keep going, and come away. That's the heat thief. But in that analogy, it's the air taking the heat out, whereas for us, it's the water. But
And that's what you're trying to get them to understand. Well, by doing that, so okay, what's that? So the friction's doing that. All right, so what? Decomposition, right? Pyrolysis, yeah, all right, brilliant. That's fire gases. Oh, right.
Yeah.
You see them gas, and we blow a candle out, and you'll see the little bits. Obviously, see that's flammable. I can get that going. Really? Touch it with a taper.
Yeah.
What was on fire? What was the candle? Yeah, but I've lit it up here.
Yeah.
Not
I didn't
really
even
sure
come in
about
contact
that.
with the candle.
The thing
Why?
is, you don't
Why?
know a
Think
thing
why?
until you need to know a thing.
Yeah.
So before they come into this career, it's like, there's fire, brilliant. I've got a match, light a candle. There you go, it's lit.
Yeah.
But then when you strip it down and then you're like, right, now you need to understand it. Like you say, it's like, no, I don't know what you mean. I've got the candle, you've put a match, it's lit.
Yeah.
You've put it out, and like you said, stripping it back. And I love that when we spoke about it in previous podcast. Is it the fireman's principle of if you are a good instructor like you are, and you should be able to explain anything to a child, and if you can, then brilliant, you're laughing. But it's when you can, and then you've got those questions, or you've got those students that aren't engaging or aren't understanding, and you've got to think, well, how can I get them to that place?
It's like you're trying to dechunk a thing that people never knew its individual components. I always use electricity as a nice example. Most of us don't really know electricity. We don't really understand it. Doesn't stop us from walking into the corner of this room and switching the light on. Because we benefit from it. And we've all benefited from heat and fire our entire lives. But we've never had to try and deconstruct the thing. It's like tying your shoes. If you were born with the ability to tie your shoes, and I asked you how to explain to me how you tie your shoes, you'd struggle. Because you have to de-chunk the thing that's already subconscious. And I think the same with fire. It was just subconscious. We saw it when we were a child, and we never tried to deconstruct it. And we were always told, it went straight to the vernacular. The chair's on fire. The bonfire is on fire. The thing's on fire. So that's where, and we didn't realise that we had to break that down. But you can't just drop the bomb in and straight in and go, everybody know what thermal capacity is? And I was, yeah. And then we've already missed steps 1 to 7. And then doesn't matter anything. I'm going to talk for another hour now. But I jumped the chasm at the start, and you were all still stood on the other side. So the rest of the hour has been a waste. But we do that in firefighting. We walk in, and people don't go, you know what, that acronym's been on the board for 20 minutes. I've no idea what the fuck it is, but I daren't ask in case they think I'm stupid. And everyone falls off at a different point. So you get to the end and go, how was that for everybody? And you don't realise they're actually scattered in the wreckage of this last hour because you lost them all at different points and they just switched off.
And that's the art of being a good instructor, is reading your room and understand that. You talked about thermal capacity there. We had one yesterday, and I was talking about, obviously, everything is your passive, soaks all that heat up, and then it will at some point reach its thermal capacity and start emitting out. And one of the lads was just sat there and he's like, no, I'm not getting that. I said, just think about it, as much as you can hold on to, and then you can't hold any more and it starts spilling out. So I get that. He goes, is that like a sponge then? I says, well, it probably is, if I'm honest. Sponge on the desk, I'm going to pour water into it. It'll take up. Then when it's reached its capacity, it'll spill out. So it is.
Yeah.
And
I use a cup with a pinprick in it as an example, because it's always going to be trying to give that heat back out. But if you're slowly pouring it in, because it's the analogy of a wall. When the wall's heated up enough, it's going to become inactive. But if you looked at a wall as a cup on its side, you're going to keep pouring water into it until it's full. Then what's going to happen? It's all going to spill out the front. Now, there's a few pinpricks in it, because it's always giving that out. But if you are, if that thermal radiation is conducting it, it's heating up faster than you can give it out. Eventually, bang, it's going to be, it's full, it's reached its capacity. It's going to start giving stuff off, it's giving off that material. The material is starting to be released. It's coming into the atmosphere in terms of pyrolysis and giving off those combustible materials. It's full. Yeah. Because people know what full means. Again, it's taken from a student from where they're not to where you want them to be. Or sorry, from where they are from where you want them to be. They know what full means. They know what empty means. Yeah. They've seen a cup before. You could just show them. Yeah. You could just pour it into a cup and say, "Is it reached its capacity yet?" No, but it's still got some water. It's still warm. The wall is what the radiators. It's a bit warm, but it's not heating the rest of the room up yet. It's not fully active.
Just finding a thing that they can relate to, and it clicks.
And it's using loads, and you've got we were playing about with diesel yesterday, so we had a cup of diesel.
Yeah.
Great example, yeah.
Obviously dropping tapers into it.
Yeah.
I said that should go up, shouldn't it? So can't heat it up enough because the heat source not enough. And then we had in a squirty bottle, just over a naked flame, and then we were like, oh, bloody hell.
But it's the same thing. So why is it different?
Same. But we've made it smaller, we've made it obviously get that. And then we had paper, and we worked through the tapers, through the obviously solid wood, and then I get all that now.
It's great to see each
It is
different.
lovely,
It's
isn't
like a
it?
bunch of lights in a room,
Yeah.
and you see each student switch on when they get to the point, and then you go, right, let's cycle back. Let's change it. Let's pivot at 50 degrees, and let's go again. And you see that light switch on, and then you might not ever get the whole room, but you can.
You'll always get something from everyone.
Yeah, if you can get over yourself enough as an instructor and be willing to either be a bit playful, be a bit silly, dumb down your language. You haven't got to try and flex and overcomplexify with all these big long verbal masturbation words. Do you know what I mean? It's like don't use big words. We're fucking firefighters. Right? Get over yourself.
But the other one, I'd trip myself up because I wouldn't know it anyway.
I was going to say.
Because then that third why. Well,
We
why
had
did you
Captain
use that word?
Parolysizing on our course, bless him. Like, don't worry about the word. If I'm sure that's not a word, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We all know what you're
As
at.
long as you explain what you're at and where you're at. But then,
can you see it when it happens? Good, fine. Don't worry about what it's called.
But that total light bulb moment. So we'd spend 3 hours in the classroom, which is great.
Yeah.
Then we went outside. We had a quick chat just to confirm where they were. But then dropping back probably 15 minutes in this conversation, my bugbear is ducking under. Obviously, your fire gas is getting to the compartment. Because we'd had these students from brand new, they didn't know any different, and they were cooling as they were walking up to the shipping container. And that's what I think I've learned that.
Yeah.
I've actually got something across to them that will stick with them. That when they see fire gases emitting from a building, they're going to cool it on the way in.
What does worry me is when they do come into the old hand firefighter as well, though, who with the best of intentions says, no, heat rises, get underneath it. And will they have the conviction and the depth of knowledge? Sometimes not, to go, but hang on a minute, one sec. I may be misremembering, but I remember this guy, Steve, or this girl, Sarah, saying about this. And does that, am I wrong if I do that? And I go, well, it's not the way I was trained. Well, I'm sure it wasn't, but am I wrong in doing it that way? I'm achieving the thing still, right?
I think the way with that is because we've shown them it and they know what it should feel like.
Yeah.
So they know what, I'm not saying good feels like, but they know what acceptable feels like. And they know they're acceptable by doing these techniques. If they're doing the other one and ducking under stuff and sitting in a room that's full of hot fire gases, that's not acceptable. And I think that will be where it triggers. And
that's the beauty about fire, isn't it? It's going to tell you.
Oh,
It'll let you know. You can't
it doesn't let up. No.
Do you feel better, don't you? No, I really fucking don't. I don't think it's working.
But we tried it with you guys on the course. We showed you all the things that we were going to cover over the 2 weeks on the second day. On the Tuesday, we showed you the rainbow. We showed you that. But then we asked you, do what you've always done. Yeah. It didn't last long.
No,
because people are like, oh, I've done. Bloody hell, that's hot. Go on, bloody hell, that's hot. So how do I get round that? Tell you what, I'm going to use water.
Which is a brilliant approach, though, because you've not taken it away. You've said, crack on and do that.
Yeah.
We've shown you these ways, though, and then you've allowed us to see and choose ourselves, actually. We may have done that now, but this is more effective.
I always call it the sell versus the tell. Because if you sell someone on something, it's like, just have a go. Tell you what, have that water bottle for a week. Let me know how you get on with it, yeah? Versus tell is, right, give me your old one back, using this one from now on. And you'll be like, your back's up. You told me I've got to use this. You've not given me the option to compare it. But if you go, look, it's a tool in the toolbox. And that's what you guys and girls did. It's like 2 or 3 days, these are some more tools. Go away and use all the different tools. Let me know how you get on. Obviously it wasn't letting how I get on. You were with us every day. But it's like, we use the different tools and we go, no, you know what, I fancy using my old water bottle again and use it and go, oh, this is shit. Yeah. It's really not working. I tell you what, I want to use it. Not because I'm told to use it, not because I'm made to use it. Yeah. It's better. Yeah. And I want to use it. I think that's the big shift.
It's all it ever is. It's all it ever can be. And it's
but it's very rare, though. Because in services, it's usually a tell.
You will.
This is the SOP. You do the thing I told you to do, and you're like, but I don't think it's working.
It's a great way to instruct. And again, we go back to like those great instructors and being a good instructor and being effective and getting that buy-in.
People should want to listen to you, not because you're the instructor and you have to listen. They should want to. Because you should be interested. You should be able to take people to places where they're unfamiliar. They should want to hear it from you.
Yeah, but then we should also trust the guys that we've got with us,
100%,
and give them all them tools. Yeah, some will take them all and quite happily flip it backwards and forwards. Some will just think, well, my capacity is not going to take everything on, so I'm going to take the bits that I can remember. Well, then that's cool. There's no issue.
So that with knots and lines. You'll have 27 different methods from 100 different firefighters, and they'll go, When you find one that works, use the one that works. Doesn't matter if James does it different.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if Susan has got her special way because she's got 3 fingers and 1 hand.
Yeah.
That works for her. You do your way.
See, I still like the lowering from underfoot because I can get that one right.
Yeah.
And it's when you start talking alpine butterfly knots and all the other stuff, that's voodoo stuff.
Special ones, isn't there?
I want to be super respectful of your time, but I wanted to ask a final 2 things. We spoke about loads of different places, and we're in a facility that is very well funded and has got some great resources. If people have got not a lot of resources and they're on low budgets, maybe they haven't even got a couple of people on our courses come from different places around the world, don't have access to certain resources, aren't allowed to do certain things. If you had low budget, low time, maybe, what are some of the low hanging fruit that, because a great instructor, they say bad workman blames his tools. I know, having been with you in rooms with no resources, you can get some great things across. So what are some easy low-hanging fruits or top tips or tricks for people to do fire behaviour on a budget?
So the best one for me will always be the internet.
Okay.
So do your research, get your tools out there, YouTube. Certain fire services have got their own YouTube sites. Mm-hmm. There are multiple people out there who've done training aids. Mm-hmm. That is pretty much free.
Yep.
And as an instructor, spend your time, do your research, get some videos that you can actually explain, put the context on it to show students. The time and the essence is the hard one because obviously, it's having me stood in front of multiple people. That doesn't always work like that. So can we turn that into a video that talks through it all? Mm-hmm. But that will always be the cheapest one we use.
I mean, we filmed some stuff, didn't we, around trench effect, we filmed some stuff around Coanda, even just while we were here. This stuff has been done before. I say to people now, I mean, the podcast is one example, YouTube's are all the other examples. There's never been so many resources available to operational crews. It's not your resources, it's your resourcefulness. If you genuinely want to find stuff out, when we joined, you had to get the manuals of firemanship or go and borrow one from a station or sign it out from a library. But now, there is so many goddamn resources.
So much there. And like you ended up doing yesterday is build models. Yes, it's going to emit some product from there, but they're sustainable. We can do that in any training environment, if I'm honest, if we keep a small scale.
It's not giving off more or less than the person next door on the barbecue.
It's not the end of the world. You'll get away with that. And that is Sterling board. If you haven't even got that, you could break down pallets, which tend to be free.
Yeah.
So, I always say to people, it's easier to ask forgiveness and permission. Yeah. Like, just do a little cheeky one with a small demo that you can fit in a metre square in the drill yard. And if someone complains, so the station manager tells you off, sorry, won't do it again. Okay? Most of the time, if you record it and show them, they'll go, bloody hell, that was good.
I like that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, can we put that on our internal learning system? What station are you at? Can we use that? Yeah. But most people are so petrified of, I'll get sacked or I'll get this. Well, so what's the counter? You'll have firefighters that don't know. And then will you honestly blame yourself or the training department when someone gets hurt or injured at an incident? And we go, how much fire behaviour training have we done?
None.
Yeah.
And then it's probably the harder one to do, but it's still a good way of doing it, is share resources between services. You're always going to neighbour another service, unless you're on an island, like some of our students were. There's still people we can work with and do stuff like that.
100%. Debriefs. Is there any, we heard a couple, this weekend, and I know our memories will fail us, so I'm sure we'll all leave some out, but, Sarah, yourself, Steve, is there any debriefs from a fire behaviour perspective? Because God knows how many courses you've run, mate. Is there any that you think that's a really good one for people to go and look at or read or listen to or find a video on, because it's a great demonstration of lessons learned? Because we said, yesterday, that Winston Churchill, if we don't learn these, we're doomed to repeat them. So from a fire behaviour perspective, if people wanted to see the result of getting something wrong, do you have a favourite one's a horrible way to say it, but it's like
the one that
a most useful one where there was crucial lessons learned and it was a good example?
Well, for me, and obviously it's an awful one because we did lose some of our people, was your Shirley Towers.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be learned from that. And you can get so much from it. And it's not even just fire behaviour, it's the whole incident command, it's the whole setup of how that works. But
it's that's a dialogue domino of errors, unfortunately. Yeah,
there's so much involved, but by sharing it, it means that we've got a fighting chance of not all of them things happening again. But that's why I love the IFE, the Firefighter Safety events, because you go onto their website, they've got that, and you can look at them. But it's not just the UK, there's stuff from all over. So there's like a fantastic one in New Zealand to do with one of the towers there. And that's fire behaviour in the room. So how the hose management, how getting up think maybe it's on the 7th floor, so that's hard to set up a high rise. But then the other side of what the show of it was is that they didn't control a cordoned area, and there was the fallen glass and the injuries that came from that.
Yeah.
So it isn't just we get task focused.
Fallen glass when it starts to plane. I've seen 1 or 2 videos of that, and it's scary.
You see it, and they've got all the footage of that. So they've absolutely smashed the job. They've got in, they've done all of that side of life, but they've got task focus from moth to a flame, dealt with the orange flickery stuff that's going on, nailed that. But then just remember there's a bigger picture. But then that for me is what good incident commanders do. And then know your role, know what's going in it. So your flexi duties that come on,
drawn in.
Step back. The district officer that comes on to assist the duty officer, step back again.
Yeah.
So always have them, the layers of where it can be. But yeah, Shirley Towers will be the one that I'll go for a lot. Balmoral Bar we've mentioned earlier on in this conversation. But all again, it's just the understanding. And if you really stripped it down, we all know it. But it depends the brief that we're given and the information that we receive on scene. Persons reported, unfortunately, will mean we will step up a level, and we're going to risk that bit more again.
We start to get overstimulated, and we start to forget little things through the best of intentions.
Because we're driven by finding that person that's in there.
Stakes are up.
And then Paul's here word for me for the Stephen Hunt when we was talking about estate. It's not directly what people would link to fire behaviour, but ventilation is, and so is the effects of heat on us. There may be little things that, again, like you said, they go amiss, but they are things that are going to get us in fire behaviour, both of them equally, and it's stuff that we need to be aware of because it will have some, unfortunately, detrimental effects.
I'm going to go for King's Cross, only because all of them I think are useful at different stages of people's comprehension of fire behaviour. Yeah. But I think King's Cross, you can go right down to the very simplistic aspects of, incipient fire growth, and then how fire travels, why it might go faster, why it might go slower, piston effects, trench effects. There's so many extra things you can do with that. It offers loads of angles.
There is a lot of that.
And also, as we saw on this course, it's easy to build a model of as well. People can build a model, they can build 3 or 4 different types of it and go see what. And again, it's not the tell, it's the look, do we all agree these all look the same? Okay, we're going to put one at this angle, one at that angle. One's going to have 3 sides, one's going to have 4 sides, one's just going to be on its own. And we'll watch together now. There's no tricks here. Do you want to look at it? And then off it goes, and you go, wow, I saw it. That's a very...
It was impressive.
It was impressive, wasn't it?
Amazing results from it. Even I was impressed. It was our team.
We did. I was like, I didn't expect I was going to go that well.
But it just puts that context behind what you're discussing, and then you go out, and it just clicks a bit better, doesn't it?
It does, and it's the one we've seen a few times here where people have chose that one for that. And the other one, and I use it when we do international courses. So we've had Qatar and Malaysia, Fire, have all been here. They've all got escalators, train stations and stuff like that. So it's, like we spoke about the Swedish model, different buildings, Americans, different size buildings. Still fire. And I think the bit that we need to get our heads around is this. We teach BA over here, and then we go somewhere else and we teach fire behaviour, and then we go somewhere else and we teach TAC vent. They need to be all in the same place, because you can't have one without the other. You just can't.
Dude, thanks so much for your time. Absolutely love that. Can't wait to come back down and grab another chat at some point, but I know you've got a lot to do, so I'll let you go on with it.
Nice one. Thanks a lot.
Firefighters podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continuing, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.